Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good day. I greet to the honorable panels, our respected lecturers and my fellow friends, members of the floor. I am Ahmad Akmal Haikal bin Ahmad Nizam will be presenting my study entitled Investigating IPGM TESL Teacher Trainees Teaching and Learning Activities During Reading Classes. Without further ado, teacher trainees from Institute of Teacher Education (IPG) had finished their second phase of practicum. These teacher trainees were assigned to teach in primary school classes to equip themselves for the real world of teaching. These teacher trainees must follow the SEFA-aligned DSKP as a reference for them to carry out the lesson so that the content standard and learning objective status are achieved. Thus, in this study, the researcher focused on one of the modules from the SEFA-aligned DSKP, which is reading module. Based on an observation conducted by Antonia William, Malomat Yunus and Azlina Abdul Aziz, stated that there was only one similar challenges encountered by the Malaysian English language teacher, which were the pupils do not master the reading skill. They added that it is believed that a well-planned reading lesson is needed to increase the pupils' comprehension towards reading. In another research conducted by Liu Lan Chen, Noraini Ma'ruf and Malomat Yunus in 2016, stated that pupils have to understand the language before comprehending the content of what they are reading. Therefore, in this case, teachers are the one who plays a significant role to activate pupils' background knowledge and their language during lessons to help them to comprehend the reading. Moving to the next point, the purpose of the study was that the researcher wants to find out how the IPGM TESL teacher trainees conduct the teaching and learning session during their practicum phase. There were four research objectives that the researcher wanted to study, which were the first one to find out the text type used by teacher trainees during reading classes, to identify resources used by teacher trainees during reading classes, next, to identify the teaching activities conducted by teacher trainees during reading classes, and the last one is to identify differences in technique that the teacher trainees use during reading classes based on gender. Thus, based on the objectives that have been stated, the questions that the researcher wants to answer at the end of the research were: the first one, which text type is preferred by teacher trainees during reading classes? Which resources did the teacher trainees use the most during reading classes? What are the preferred teaching activities conducted by teacher trainees during reading classes? And based on gender, are there any differences in techniques that teacher trainees use during reading classes? For the significance of the study will reveal which method, resource, teaching materials, and text type which often used by teacher trainees in conducting their lessons. The study will also crucial to enhance the teaching and learning session conducted by future teacher trainees and even teachers in school, as they can vary the teaching method and materials used during the lessons. There were two researchers that was significant to this study. The first one was carried out by Antonia William, Malomat Yunus, and Azlina Abdul Aziz in 2016, which studied on the students' perception of using games in the teaching of reading skills. The sample from the study was Year 5 and Year 6 pupils of Sekolah Kebangsaan Saint Giles, Padak 1. The conclusion that had been made on the study was male respondents display greater interest in reading when games were used. This was significant to the current study, which objective were to investigate the teaching activities conducted by IPGM TESL teacher trainees during reading classes, and this research could be a stepping stone in determining the teaching activities preferred by the teacher trainees. The second research was conducted by Liu Lan Chen, Noraini Ma'ruf, and Malomat Yunus, also in 2016, entitled Factors Affecting ESL Reading Comprehension of Malaysian Secondary School Students, which respondents were the Form 2 students of SMK Greenwood. The results of the study indicates that it was important for the teacher to find out best technique of teaching based on the student's ability, background and previous knowledge, interest, motivation, and vocabulary knowledge to gain their understanding in reading comprehension aspect. This study was closely related to the current study regarding the teaching activities conducted by IPGM TESL teacher trainees during reading classes. Thus, this research employs a quantitative research and adopted a survey research designed to answer all four research objectives and research questions that had been raised in the early presentation. According to the IPGM, there were 5 campuses that offer TESL as their major of studies for the June 2017 intake. According to the data collected from the Student Representative Council presidents, there are 290 TESL teacher trainees June 2017 intake from the 5 campuses. From this total population, 30 teacher trainees were taken out for the pilot study. Thus, the population was 260 teacher trainees. According to Crazy and Morgan, since the population size was 260, the sample size should be 155. The tables in the slides indicates Crazy and Morgan sample size determination table used in the study sampling. After the sample size was finalized, the convenience sampling method was used to determine the samples. In this research, the 155 samples were chosen based on convenience sampling because they were easily accessible for the researcher and willing to participate in the survey. A questionnaire was used for the survey. The questionnaire was adapted from the Progress in International Reading Literacy Study (PIRLS) teacher questionnaire, which was retrieved from the International Association for the Evaluation of Education Achievement (IEA) Boston College. There were two sections in the questionnaire. The first section was demography and the second section was constructed to fulfill the research question stated previously. Likert scale was used to determine the answer. The Likert scale were 5 every day, 4 almost every day, 3 once or twice a week, 2 once or twice a month, and 1 never or almost never. Next is the research procedure. I had carried out this research in 6 stages. The first step was the instrument preparation. The instrument, which was a questionnaire, was explained in previous slide. The next step was to get experts to review the questionnaire. In this case, the questionnaire was reviewed by Dr. Sakhiah binti Rahim, lecturer of the Department of Languages IPGKDRI. After that, the researcher had received approval from the experts. A pilot test had been carried out as explained previously. For the pilot study, the Chromebox Alpha reliability analysis results were at 0.867. According to Downing 2004, the analysis was classed as high and the questionnaire was considered reliable. After the instrument had been finalized, the researcher had done a full-scale research by distributing Google Form link to the respondents via WhatsApp and email. The final step was to analyze data collected using Statistical Package for Social Science (SPSS) software. To carry out this survey, the researcher sent out a permission letter from the Deputy Director of Educational Policy Planning and Research Department, Ministry of Education Malaysia, to the 5 representatives of the selected Institute of Teacher Education campus. Next, a representative from the 5 campuses were chosen to help in distributing the questionnaire. And lastly, the questionnaire was distributed through Google Form links, which was passed to the representative. Next is the data analysis procedure. The first stage to analyze the data was to prepare the data. The data needs to be converted from raw data from the questionnaire into meaningful and organized data in the SPSS software. In this study, the data collected was transferred into the spreadsheet in the SPSS software data editor window. For your information, the study utilized both descriptive and inferential analysis method since it compromises the requirement of the research questions. For the first section of the questionnaire, the researcher only analyzed the respondents' frequency and percentage based on the items which were gender and campus. For the second section, the researcher analyzed item 1, 2, and 3 by its percentage of respondents for each scale, mean, and standard deviation. The fourth item in the second section was analyzed using an independent sample t-test method because it was an inferential statistical analysis. The data were then presented in tables and pie charts to give a clear and easy interpretation for the reader. To determine the level of internalization, I referred to a research conducted by Jawiyah Daki Muhammad Yusuf, Haji Osman, Abdul Halim Tamuri, Zakaria Stapa, Shamsul Azhar Yahya, and Siti Mahiran Ismail, Alias Ibrahim, for the categorization and interpretation of the scores onto the levels displayed in table. Next, conceptual framework. The diagram displayed was regarding the conceptual framework of this study. The study focuses on the implementation of reading classes by the IPGM TESL teacher trainees. The aspect that the researcher wanted to identify was narrowed down into text type use, resource use, teaching activities conducted, and the differences in technique used by teacher trainees. All teaching activities listed lead to the extent of the implementation of reading classes by the IPGM TESL teacher trainees. The findings gathered were to answer all research questions of the study. The first one was on which text type is preferred by teacher trainees during reading classes. In terms of text type used during reading classes, other stories, fiction, with mean 2.81 were commonly used by the teacher trainees throughout their practicum phase 2. Fables and fairy tales with mean 2.67 were ranked the second. The third rank were poem with mean 2.54. Next was the chart, diagram and graph. Mean 2.24 was ranked the fourth. Apart from that, plays with mean 1.83 were the last text type used by teacher trainees during reading classes. The second research question was on the resources used by teacher trainees during reading classes. Firstly, in terms of resource used by teacher trainees during reading classes, workbooks or worksheets were the most used resource with mean 3.72 by the teacher trainees during reading classes. Textbook was ranked the second with mean 3.68. The third rank for the resource used was reading materials from the internet with mean 3.44. A variety of children books were ranked fourth with mean 2.65. On the other hand, materials from the subject with mean 2.06 were the least used resource among teacher trainees. The third research question was on teaching activities conducted during reading classes. Firstly, in terms of reading activities conducted during reading classes, the most conducted method is to identify the main ideas of what they have read with mean 3.78. The second rank for teaching activity was explain or support the understanding of what they have read with mean 3.66. The third rank was comparing what they have read with experience they have had with mean 3.47. Make predictions about what will happen next in the text they are reading was ranked the fourth with mean 3.43. And apart from that, the least conducted teaching activity during reading classes was to compare what they have read with other readings with mean 2.97. The last research question was on difference in technique that teacher trainees use during reading classes. Levin's test for equality of various significant value is 0.528, which is larger than 0.05. So the researcher used the statistics in the row labeled equal variance assumed for the value of significance two-tailed in the t-test for equality of mean column. Significance two-tailed value is 0.0733. So according to Muhammad Yusri, as it is larger than 0.05, it shows that there was no significant differences between male and female teacher trainees that used the technique during reading classes. The tables in the slide shows the independent sample t-test table. For the research question, based on the standard deviation 0.898, mean 2.81, and the highest percentage 45.2%, the researcher concluded that teacher trainees commonly use other stories fiction during reading classes. For the second research question, the researcher concluded that workbooks or worksheets were used the most by teacher trainees during reading classes throughout their practicum. For the third research question, the researcher concluded that identify the main ideas of what they have read were conducted the most by teacher trainees during reading classes throughout their practicum. And for the last research question, a significance two-tailed value is recorded at 0.0733, which was larger than 0.05. It shows that there was no significant difference between male and female teacher trainees that use the technique during reading classes. As a conclusion for this research objective 1, which was regarding the text type used, the result indicates that teacher trainees preferred to use the other stories fiction for their reading classes with the mean 2.81 and standard deviation 0.898, which shows an average usage of the teacher trainees. Plays was the least preferred text type used during reading classes by the teacher trainees with mean 1.83 and standard deviation 0.938. The conclusion for the second research objective regarding resources used was that workbooks or worksheets with mean 3.72, standard deviation 0.977 were highly used by teacher trainees during reading classes throughout the practicum stage. Alternately, materials from the other subject with mean 2.06, standard deviation 1.11 were the least used resource by teacher trainees during reading classes. For the third objective regarding teaching activities conducted was that the researcher concluded identify the main ideas of what they have read were commonly used by the teacher trainees throughout the reading classes. Alternately, teacher trainee least preferred to compare what they have read with other readings with mean 2.97 and standard deviation 1.24 during reading classes. The last objective was regarding the differences in technique that teacher trainees used. The significant two-tailed value was recorded at 0.73, which was larger than 0.05. This value indicates that there were no any significant differences in the terms of technique that teacher trainees use during reading classes between male and female teacher trainees. As for the hypothesis stated, which was there are differences in techniques used by teacher trainees during reading classes based on their respective gender, the early hypothesis was rejected. For the recommendations, firstly, future researchers can use this study to research how this method, resource, teaching activities, and technique used by IPGM TESL teacher trainees affect the proficiency of the pupils in schools. Future research could carry out other quantitative research on the pupil to identify their proficiency and how the teacher trainees teaching and learning session affects their English language development. Next, further researchers can conduct qualitative research such as a case study on implementing reading module in the SAFER aligned curriculum. The qualitative research can be conducted with English teachers in schools to determine the problem faced by them regarding the current reading module that all Malaysian English teachers are carrying out. Besides, to overcome the teachers' challenges and problems while implementing SAFER aligned reading modules, further researchers can come up with an intervention to carry out action research for future studies. The intervention should focus on overcoming problems such as the reading competency of the pupils or teaching practices of the teachers. Next, moving to the last slide, which was on the implications. Firstly, the impact of the study was on the IPGM TESL teacher trainees. The study results indicates that the teacher trainees have their own preferences in carrying out the reading module during the English language classes. Other IPGM TESL teacher trainees can use this study to diversify their teaching methods, resource, and technique used during reading classes, especially in carrying out the reading module. Another impact of this study on the IPGM teacher trainees was that they could increase their creativity in executing the teaching and learning because they can study other teacher trainees' preferences during the practical phase. Therefore, to equip themselves for future education, that will evolve. These teacher trainees have to continuously develop their skills to ensure their pedagogical practices. Lastly, the study also impacted the English language teachers that are currently teaching in the Malaysian schools. Based on the findings on the IPGM teacher trainees, which reflect the current practices in school, this study should aid the current English teachers in Malaysia in identifying the teacher trainees' preferences during reading classes. This can help the teachers to carry out lessons with new strategies, resources, and technique based on the teacher trainees' preferences. And this study should also assist the current English language teacher to plan and organize lessons. I think that's all from me. With that, I thank you.